So we are going to do the pasuk in Mishlei that we skipped at the very beginning, 18:1, and hopefully you'll see why we skipped it.
Got it.
So much so, I actually have a source sheet devoted just to this exact thing because you'll see why. Isaac, are you getting a Mikos Gedolos?
He's got a.
Okay. I mean, you can use that also. So this is the okay. I'll explain what this is. On the first side is just translation issues. Okay. Because the difficulty with this pasuk is not necessarily in the idea, but it's in the translation. Okay, and I'll share it on the screen for Joe here. Okay, all right. So, and you'll see why I didn't want to start with this one because it would have scared everyone away from Mishlei permanently. All right. So, without looking at the translations yet, okay, which I put the translations on here. L'ta'ava yivakesh nifrad b'chol tushia yisgala. All right. So what are the words that you can translate?
For desire.
Yeah.
Seeks.
Okay.
Or,
good so far.
Yeah.
Seeks will seek.
I have no idea what nifrad means.
Okay. Separate, right? Literally, nifrad is one who is separate, right? Yeah. Or separate, set aside or separated. Yeah.
In all or with all, tushia. It will be revealed.
Yes, gala with an ion.
Oh
man.
yeah. Now, just to whet your appetite, I put 3 translations on here. Okay, skip down to the middle of the page. Just look at how different these are. Okay, Art Scroll: one who removes himself to court lust will be exposed in every Torah conclave.
What?
Living Nach: he who detaches himself pursues desire, he will be exposed among the wise. And then Alter: a loner seeks a pretext where one needs prudence, he is exposed. Okay, and so this is the difficulty in this is going to be in the translation, and I want to spend the first half of this on just trying to translate it. By the way, just a couple notes on translation here, because this is the first time I'm using all 3 English translations. So Art Scroll, some people don't like Art Scroll. I like Art Scroll. Maybe it's just because I was like raised in learning with Art Scroll, but you should be aware that in Mishlei, the Art Scroll translation almost inevitably follows either Rashi or the Metzudas David. Okay, so that's just one thing to be aware of. Living Nach, Joe, you made a comment to me on probably Thursday or Wednesday about Living Nach, and you mentioned it was Aryeh Kaplan. That's actually not true. Living Torah is Aryeh Kaplan. It's his translation. Living Nach was translated and published after Aryeh Kaplan's death in his style, but I don't believe it has. It's definitely not written by Aryeh Kaplan, but I don't believe it has anything to do with Aryeh Kaplan. Like, I don't think they based it on his notes or anything like that. So it's just, it's following after his style, but only Living Torah is Aryeh Kaplan, just so you know. Aryeh Kaplan was a modern scholar who lived in the late 1900s. He died at the age of 39, I believe. And he basically has two genres of English writing. He wrote a lot in English, 2 genres of English writing. One is encyclopedia style like writings where he basically is very, very good at synthesizing a lot or collecting a lot of different opinions and presenting them in a very ordered and hierarchical way. Like he has a book called The Jewish Encyclopedia or the Encyclopedia of Jewish Philosophy. Encyclopedia of Jewish Thought, I think. And it basically just outlines all of Jewish thought and then just brings down all the, it's Mishnah Torah style, but brings down all the sources. Very good research book. He also has English books, but then he also has Kabbalistic stuff. And according to those who felt that he was a real Kabbalist, that's why he died at the age of 39, just like the Ari, just like the, all the other Kabbalists. And if you want to, if you ever listen to Rabbi Chait's shiur on Kabbalah, he goes off on Aryeh Kaplan to the point where they actually remove it from the tape on the Jewish Meditation book. Open question as to how valuable this Kabbalistic stuff is. And then Alter is a new translation that I've been using a lot. So he is Robert Alter is his name. He, I believe, is the only man in recent times who did a single-handed translation of all of Tanakh. And it took him decades to do. He is I think, professor of Jewish studies at Berkeley or something like that. He's not religious, but his commentary is very academic. But a lot of the Orthodox Jewish diktuk people I know really like him and refer to him a lot. And so I've started to use him, and he has good footnotes and good insights. So that's the translation scoop here. Okay.
Bro, can I add a quick point?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Arya Kaplan is also like an astrophysicist, something like that.
Yeah, I do recall him having some sort of background in science. Yeah. Smart guy. Okay, so going to our pasuk now. Okay, we're not going to try interpreting it yet. Let's work on the translation for a second here. So latava yivakish nifrad. Okay, so latava for desire, or our school translated lust. Okay, and I think I mentioned this point in my hakdama to Mishlei for the community Mishlei shiur, that like people translate taiva as desire, but Sadigon translates it as like the drive for immediate pleasure. So it's not just pleasure or desire. It's like, so that's why I think like lust might be a good translation for it. The only problem is in English, lust has like a sexual connotation, which is not necessarily the case for taiva. Yivakesh, he will pursue. Nifrad, he is separate. Okay. B'chol tushia yisgala. So tushia is the operational term here. Okay. The one that people don't know how to translate. Okay. And the reason why people don't know how to translate it, look at the second half of the source sheet. So you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So there are 12 pesukim in Tanakh that have this word tushia. You can see the majority of them are in Eov. 4 of them are in Mishlei. And then there's 2 in the Nevi'im. Okay.
Oh, man.
Yeah. It's not helpful. In other words, it doesn't appear in Torah. All right. And I guess if you, depending on when you hold Eov was written, then either Mishlei or Eov are the first books to use it. Right. So in other words, either you're going to be deriving your definition from Eov or from Mishlei, and Yeshayahu and Micha came way after Shlomo and, well, I guess, again, depending on when you hold Eov was written. Huge machlokes when Eov was written and who wrote it, right?
Did you write it?
I did not. We can rule out one. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I put a couple translations at the top. Okay. So for example, you have, skip the Targum for now. Okay. I mean, you can see, okay, Targum translates it as Malchana, which I didn't actually look up in Jastrow, but I'm assuming is related to Malchus in some way. We can look it up later. Okay, Metzudas ציון though says Tushia, Kin Nikras HaTorah. So the Torah is called Tushia. V'hu milashon yesh. So he holds that the origin of the word is yesh. Okay, don't ask me what grammatical structure it is. V'hu ki yeshna la'olam, because it exists forever. Right, or is present forever. I don't know if that means it will be eternally valid, or if he's referring to the midrash that the Torah was the, God looked into the Torah to create the world. V'lo tashuv le'ayin ki yesar dvarim. It will not return to nothingness like the other things. So going off of Metzudas ציון and Koheles, right? This is one of the, I guess this is not Hevel, but this is one of the things that would not be in the realm of Hevel, because it's gonna be forever. Okay. And then he points out Isaac's what Isaac had as a mistake, but he legitimizes Yisgala with an ayin. He says Kamo Yisgala with a hey. Okay, but that's not everyone agrees with that.
I knew.
You intended that, yeah, yeah. Okay, but then the most comprehensive treatment of Tushia that I've seen. Oh, sorry, Malbim. Okay, Malbim says Tushia is Hulsha v'tashus koach, weakness and diminishment of power or vitality. Okay. Ve'ehu utemogagani tushia. That's one of the instances in Eov. All right. And you can see, super different. Torah or weakness.
Right.
What? Okay. So the most comprehensive treatment of tushia I've seen is in the Ralbag. Sorry, that's a typo here. It shouldn't say Mishlei Hey Yud Beis. It should say Eov Hey Yud Beis. Okay. So Ralbag's first book that he wrote for public consumption was his commentary on Eov. And so a lot of his concepts find their first expression there. Like we saw in his definition of Torah, when he defines, he says Torah is a regimen that guides those who practice it probably to true success. And he defined it in Eov. Why in Eov? Because that was the first thing he wrote for everyone. So because Ralbag in Hebrew is difficult, I got my English Ralbag on Eov, which is this random book that my brother Johnny found me, just a complete translation of Eov. So you can follow along in the Hebrew, but I'm going to read this in the English. He gives several definitions of tushia here, okay? And this is what we're going to work off of in terms of like, we're going to draw our definition from, because I think this is the most comprehensive. Okay, tushia. This word is used as a name for law and order, as Trump would say. And therefore, the Torah is called tushia, for it is the proper law and order. So definition number 1 is tushia is Torah, but because the term tushia means law and order, okay, not weakness and not yesh. The word tushia can also be applied to the general conduct as is befitting man qua man, and to this wise conduct and human law, Eov refers when he asks, "The tushia nidcha mimeni," is tushia removed from me? For the Torah was not given in Eov's time, and he did not believe in the Torah. Consequently, he could not have raised the question, "Is the Torah removed from me?" But he insists that the law and order befitting the conduct of man qua man, in order to perfect his soul, was not removed from him. Okay, so, one more thing on Eov. Yeah, it is also possible. No, not quite yet. Okay, so Machlokas when Eov was written, I think the opinions range from all the way in Abraham's time to Galus Bavel. Okay, and there are 10 opinions in the Gemara as to when Eov lived, and the 10th being that he never lived, right? And that was just a mashal. But depending on when you say Eov lived, that's going to affect your interpretation of the book about whether Eov makes any reference to Torah. Because if it's before Torah was given, then it can't be Torah, and the Ralbag is of that opinion. So he's saying, though, it's a really good answer, though, because he's saying that basically Tushia means like the regimen that would govern man qua man. And until Torah came along, I guess you kind of had to figure that out on your own, like Avraham did, But then once Torah was given, so then that is the proper term for Tushia. So it's a really good way to view like the Mitzudah, to view Tushia in the Mitzudas Tzion's definition, but to also have a more expansive notion of it, that like it's not limited to Taryag mitzvos, that were given to Moshe at Sinai. It's like just the way that man should live. Okay. Then he says, Rabbah continues, it is also possible that the nation to which Eov belonged already had some national law, and he thus exults that he conducted himself according to that law perfectly. Okay, so that's another meaning of law and order, that it could just be like the national law. Okay, then he says, Tushia may also be called a plan determined upon and arranged in the mind for the performance of certain acts in order to reach the goal aimed at. For example, as for example, if a thief thought of stealing something and he planned out in his heart his act, as well as the manner in which he should accomplish the theft, now this arrangement, which he planned in his heart, became a law to him and can be called tushia. Likewise, it is said in the verse, Velo ta'asena yedehem tushia, namely that they will not carry out that which they have arranged and determined in their thoughts. So if you remember back to our Rabak here, when I said that nimus is a regimen, and I said define regimen, then we defined it as a systematic plan to achieve some sort of excellence or result. And that's basically how he's defining it here. So this is the broadest definition, which is any plan, even to the extent that it could be a plan that is for something not good. Okay?
Okay.
So I like this Rabag because it gives a nice definition that is essentially a regimen or plan or order, but he applies it to Torah, to man qua man, to national law, or to any particular plan that you have. Okay, so that's why I want to this is our home here. Okay, our anchor in the word Tushia is that Ralbag, because I think no matter what anyone says, it's going to fit into one of those things, except for the Malbim, which is weakness, right? I mean, that's a completely different meaning.
Or Malchus. Or
Malchus, yeah. Oh, no, it does fit into Malchus, right? It could be government.
Yeah.
Yeah, that actually makes sense. I didn't realize that until just now. Okay, we good? and then I included the Ralbag on Mishlei 2:7, which is the first time he says it in Mishlei. Let's just see what he says here. He says, hold on. Yitzpon la'isharim tushia. This is under the Eov quote on the first page, read by the article. Yitzpon la'isharim tushia harotzon b'tushia hanimus hamuskal asher b'devarim. So that's the conceptual order that is in things. Oh, so he's taking it a different direction now. He means remember when we were talking in the Hagdam of the Ralbag about there's the actual laws of nature that God created, and then there's our theoretical models of the laws of nature that are approximating it. So the Nimus Hamuskal is like the actual laws of nature, is what he's saying. Because that is more real. Yoser Amiti, Bezulas Hayesh Nimsa Mihadvarim Hamurkavim Mechomer B'tzur. It's more real than the actual phenomena composed of matter and form. Ki Hametzius Ledvarim Hu Mizeh Hatzad, which is the way that things exist. Okay, so that's a fifth definition, which is it's referring to the system underlying all of physical existence. Okay. All right, we got Tushia.
Yay.
Yay. Okay. And then Yisgala. I guess let's go with the Metzudas Tzyon to keep things simple with quotation marks. That means to be exposed or revealed. So now the question is, how do we translate the pasuk?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the first half is still like mystifying, right?
Right. To desire and seek the one who is separated.
Yeah.
He will seek.
Yeah, he will seek.
So the one who is separated will seek to desire.
The one who is separated will seek desire. Okay, so that's one way to do it, which is that the nifrad is the subject, and then the predicate is latava yivakesh.
Right.
So the one who is separated will seek to desire, whatever that means,
Or will desire to seek.
or will desire to seek, right?
Or you could read that person will become a nifrad
Right.
to be in his like.
Mm.
Yeah. The other way is right, is that the latava yivakesh is the subject,
Mhm.
right? That the one who seeks to desire, nifrad, will be separated.
Right.
Okay. In which case the question would be separated from what? And the question according to the other way would be, what does it mean he separates in order to yivakesh tava?
Right.
Yeah. And then the consequence here, b'chol tushia yiskala, in every tushia he will be exposed. And the fact that we translate tushia does not immediately seem to help, because no matter what translation you have, what does it mean he'll be exposed in it, or he will expose himself in it?
Well, it could be like he like like he's going contrary to it, so he'll like kind of bump up against it.
Okay, that could be it, right. Yeah, I guess the question though is, exposure to me implies a being seen or found out in some way,
Right.
which is you can still preserve it the way you want it to, but like exposed to what? Meaning
Right.
exposure
Like the
seems to be,
consequences of the law or something.
yeah, but exposure is a little weird because exposure has to do, concealment and exposure has to do with visibility,
Mhm.
And so like, this is why, by the way, Art Scroll, which again, I'm assuming is following the Tzyon, David, which I haven't seen yet, will be exposed in every Torah conclave, in every Torah gathering. So he's making Tushia into, I believe those Mepharshim say Anshe Tushia, people of Tushia. So that's one of the strictures we have here.
I see.
Yeah. Now, in the interest of time, now I guess we're not so bound. I mean, we're bound by time because we're physical beings, but we're not as bound by time in the schedule because I don't know what your plans are, but I know there's no morning shiur today, and I also,
Oh, really?
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Good to know.
yeah, yeah. That's part of why I asked who's
I will
coming
be
in.
driving back then.
Yeah, well, hopefully you get the Skar Halicha.
Yeah.
But I'm not in any rush, so I'm fine. Like trying to finish this today, but still in the interest of time, because this pasuk is so complicated. Let's actually start with one of the Mepharshim, okay? And that's going to be the Radak.
I will
Yeah.
say, I haven't had coffee yet.
Ah,
So, like, I don't need coffee yet, but I'm like, I don't want to be like going until like 10 o'clock.
yes, I understand. Yeah, I wasn't thinking of going for an infinitely long time.
Just because we're done by time.
Yes, we are around my time. Yeah. Okay, so the reason why I chose the Radak is because he gives us several options. All right, and he just spells them out, and that way we could pick one that suits us. Okay, so he says like this. And by the way, just info on the Radak. He's on the back page. That's not the info. The info is Radak is one of the, in my opinion, one of the best Mefarshim on Tanakh. Okay, problem. And if I had to choose any of the Mefarshim to learn exclusively for Nach, it would be Radak. Okay, problem is twofold. One is on Chumash, he only wrote on Bereshis. It's a beautiful commentary, but we don't have it on the rest of Chumash, so that's a tragedy. And then on Mishlei, we only have his commentary through Perek Chaf Aleph, which is a lot, but I don't know if we lost the rest of it or if we just don't have it. And the unfortunate thing is Radak is not available in print in most Sfarim. Okay, so it's not in the regular Mikos Gedolos, it's not even in the Toras Chaim. There's an obscure English volume of Mishlei that has it in the very back, published by someone who I don't know who publishes, but it is available on altorah.org. And that's where I got this one from. So it's unfortunate that it's such a good parish that we can't access easily. Latava, Yivakesh Nifrad. Mish Mavakesh Lelech Acharei Ta'avosav, Ve'eno Nishmar Mechet, Hu Nifrad Min Hakel. Okay, so one who seeks to go after his taiva, his lust, and does not guard himself from sin, he is separated from God. Okay? B'chol tushia yisgala, klomar hu nifshat mikol chozik v'chachma. Interesting. So it means he is stripped of all strength and chachma. So that sounds like he's learning tushia as,
Strength.
you mean weakness.
Yeah, weakness.
But he could also be learning it as chachma, right? It's hard to tell because he says he's stripped of all strength. And the strength thing would seem to imply tushia as like the malbim, like tashishus, like weakness. But then chachma, like, is that part of his tushia? Like, is that hard to tell what he's interpreting as tushia, right?
Yeah, I think it's saying in all weakness he'll be revealed, like he'll get weakness. I don't know why it's revealed.
Yeah. In fact, it's not even clear that he's translating it as revealed, right?
Yeah.
The closest thing he's saying here is Yisgala is nifshat. So maybe that's what he means by revealed, of like exposed, like stripped.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's read the rest of them. And again, we're gonna have to choose here. V'ish mefarshim bein kol hachachamim tegala cherpaso. So that is learning it as like anshe tushia, that it's among chachamim his disgrace will be revealed, and chachamim is either like men of Torah or men of chachma, depending on how you say tushia is.
Right.
Okay, so that one's easier to read at least. O yesh lefarsh kol chachma hugla mimenu. I don't know what that is. All chachma is huglified from him. Ve'eno rotze lishmoa osa, ella holech achar dato lahashlim tavaso. Or it means that every chachma is huglified from him, that he doesn't want to hear it, rather he'll go after his mind to fulfill his desire. Ve'in laish mate yoser mitavaso. And there's nothing that causes a person to go astray more than his taiva. This, anyone know where he's getting this from? You have to think outside of the pasuk. That where have we seen the notion before of he's going to be influenced by his taiva in his pursuit of knowledge? Yes, that's the second pasuk in the parak, which is the first one that we did.
Okay.
And so this is an example of how each pasuk in Mishlei is its own idea, but sometimes Mefarshim will treat close pesukim together to be basically one long pasuk, or they'll say that it's related in subject matter, So that's where he's getting the third opinion from. Okay, then he goes a fourth opinion. V'yesh mefarshim tushia etza. That's a new one. We haven't seen that before. It's not new. That's what the Rabag's last one was, right? The thief was like etza, not like advice that you get from someone else, but like a plan, like a practical plan. So some say it's etza. Kolomar yimas kol etza sheyitznu lo. He will despise all etza that is given to him. And that's translating yisgala with an ayin, not with a hey, because gala is related to like galal, which is gilulim, which is like filth and disgusting things. Like either, I think we call it avodas gilulim. I don't know what you call it, a negative euphemism, when you want to term something in a non-literal way to disparage it even more. It's like a contra euphemism, let's call it that, right? So we call it avodas gilulim. It really means worship of feces, but that's what we call avodah zarah. So that's disgusting. And then V'yeshkan, and then there's another one, Tushia Lashon Tshishus is weakness. Kamosh Amr Chazal, Lama Nikra Tushia, why is Torah, I think they're saying, why is Torah called Tushia? Shema Teshes Kocho Shel Adam, because it weakens a person, right? It makes you physically weak because you use all your energy for Torah. That was the, I referenced this in one of the shiurim, the Rambam's interpretation of Elazar ben Azariah, that he became like a 7-year-old man because he devoted himself to Torah, then he weakened. He became physically diminished. Klomar, Mish'eno Gibor Lamo Tavaso, someone who's not strong enough, or who is not strong in Lamo Tavaso, I guess to withhold his taiva or to not act in accordance with his taiva. Hu Noda Lakol Ki Hu Tash Koach. Everyone sees that he's weak, a weakling. Yeah. Okay. So we have our pick here. What are we gonna do? Which any of these interpreted readings strike your fancy?
That last one.
That last one? Okay, let's do that then. All right, so how would we read the pasuk according to that? So Latava Yivakesh Nifrad. So that one he didn't explain Nifrad, right?
Right, I'm not sure how that word fits.
Right. B'chol Tushia Yiskala. So in all his weakness he will be exposed, right? He'll be exposed in all of his weakness.
Sure.
So latava yivakesh nifrad. So yeah, the nifrad is the question that we have here, right? What would it mean, the nifrad? Now, just for kicks, let's look at the Malbim, because that's the only other pirush that I saw in my search this morning that explained it as weakness, and I put the Malbim at the bottom of the page there. If it's different, then we'll ignore it. But he says latava yivakesh nifrad misha kavar nifrad min hataiva vivakesh osa. What does that mean? Someone who's separate from taiva and seeks it. Kagon. Oh, I see. Kagon hazakin v'achole. So in other words, in terms of who they are, they should be separate from taiva. Like a zakin and a chole have diminished taiva, but someone who's separate from taiva and nevertheless seeks it. Right, like a creepy old man, right? They make tachbula to seek it. Oh, so like literally a creepy old man who's taking Viagra, right? That's what it means, samanim, Viagra?
Yeah.
Right, like medicines. So he's literally taking medicines to make himself have taiva.
Got it.
Right? Who yisgala b'chol tushia. He is exposed in every tushia v'chalusha miloshin tushus koach. He will be exposed in all weakness and he's just giving a synonym for weakness. Kizeh yachlish gufa b'chol mini tushus koach. This will weaken his body in all types of weakness. This sounds different than what we saw in the Radak, but let's just finish reading it anyway, just to have it there. V'yesh lomar pirush od. What is your?
No, that makes sense. I guess.
Yeah. Does yours have an expanded thing in your Mikros Gedolos?
No. Oh. The moment.
I think it should.
Oh, there.
Or does it just have the acronym?
Right.
Yeah, Birha Inyan or whatever.
No, just that.
No, okay, fine. I think it's something like Yesh Lomar Pirush Od. Misha Nifra Mina Taiva, someone who separates from Taiva. Kamoha Nazirim, Shayu Porshim, Midbaros, Bamakum Sheina Nashim. Like the Nazirim who would separate and go to the deserts where there weren't people. Gavra Tavasam, Od Yoser. So their Taiva is more overpowering. Mitokshi Vakshu Esa Taiva, Vlo Nimsa Etzlam, because they are seeking Taiva and it's not found by them. That's weird. Uvachol Yesh, V'nimsa Shabal Lifnehem, and in every thing, I think that's how he's saying Yesh, in every substance, in every phenomenon, and nimsa, right? Any phenomenon, any existing thing that comes before them, tisgala hataiva b'yeser se'es. The taiva will be like exacerbated, like it'll be like strengthened. So that
like he's saying, if you try to be ascetic, it'll strengthen your desire.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And on the other side, if you're like too much into taiva when you shouldn't be, I guess, then that'll also make you weak.
Right, it'll make you weak. That one won't exacerbate your taiva; it'll just weaken your body. Yeah.
So you have negatives on both sides.
Right. Yeah. So these are all weird. Yeah.
Right.
And then the Radak. Let's go back to the Radak now that we saw that the Malbim is different. Klomar, Misha ino gibor lamo tavaso who noda lakol kihu tashkoach. Right. So someone who is not strong enough to I assume lamo is to resist his taiva.
Okay.
Lamo tavaso, to stay his taiva, right? Is known to everyone that he's weak. Yeah.
Is that the same as the Malbim's first thing about the old man?
I don't think so, right? Because the old man means that he doesn't naturally have taiva, but he artificially induces taiva.
Okay.
And this is saying a person who, seemingly the primary case here would be someone who does have taiva and then gives into it. Then people will know that he's weak. Yeah.
This may or may not be a relevant question, but what's your definition for arduous?
The compulsive need to avoid all immediate pain and conflict. Yeah.
That's not the same. That's not the same thing as the compulsive need to pursue immediate pleasure.
Right. That's tava. Yeah.
Okay.
I see.
Well, it is related here, though. Meaning, to answer your question, is it's not the same thing. But here, the question is, why does he give in to the taiva? So there could be two reasons. I mean, the pasuk is mashma that it's because of the taiva. The taiva is overpowering, that he can't resist the lure of immediate pleasure. But sometimes you give into taiva because the immediate pain of resisting it is too much. And the only thing that leads me to point to that is the I mean, you read this both ways, but the weakness thing, right? That he's not strong enough to like resist the immediate pain. So according to the Radak, what would be? Could you focus on the Radak here? Because just the Malbim is too specific, I think, for our approach to Mishlei. Yeah. So like, what? Who cares? That's the question here, right? So what? People know that you're weak,
Right.
right? So why put the emphasis? In other words, you would think that the main consequence that Mishlei would talk about is the fact that you gave in to taiva, and like that itself is intrinsically harmful, you know. But no, it's noda lakol kihu tash koach. So why is it putting it in a social framework? And I'm calling it social because how else can you understand noda lakol?
Right.
Unless you have like some way to understand it. I think noda lakol means like people will see it and know it.
It's good we've done a billboard.
Well, I mean, it's obviously talking to a person who doesn't like care about the intrinsic harms of giving it to taiva.
Yes, definitely. Either who doesn't care about it or doesn't care about it as much as he cares about the social. Right,
sure.
right, yeah. So that's what I would refer to as a typically Mishleic motive, which is caring about resisting taiva is already a very high level, and Mishlei does deal with that, but that's not what's going to motivate most people. What's going to motivate most people is consequences that are painful in areas that they naturally care about, and social standing is definitely one of those areas.
Right.
And let me argue against this also, is that I don't think this is, on the surface, this is not true, okay? Meaning, you look at the people in the world who are viewed as like, as playas, right? Like, I mean, I know it's, this is the example that Rebbe and Rabbi Moskowitz will always use. I think it's outdated, but Hugh Hefner,
Okay.
right? So like Hugh Hefner, that was his whole lifestyle, is he lived in the Playboy mansion, and like he was always surrounded by like you know, objects of taiva and like giving into taiva and stuff. I don't think people looked at him and said, oh, there's a weakling, you know. Which is why I'm sympathetic to the translations that say, that imply that this person is somehow trying to conceal it, you know, like when he says that's the Anshe Tushia Perush, that like if he's let me try to find someone who actually says Anshe Tushia. I don't have any more handouts for the Mikros Gedolos, but I remember someone said that, it might have been even the Metzudas David. Let's see here. Because in other words, if you're talking about, if your social realm is people who care about not giving to taiva, so then it is a big consequence, and they do notice it if you are a weakling and can't like control your taivas. Right. Yeah, so like for look, Metzudas David, for example, says Latava Talmid Chacham Hanifrad Lifrosh Min Torah. So Talmid Chacham who separates himself from the Torah, who puts himself aside to separate from the Torah. Ki Yivakesh Lelechas Avar Tavas Halev, when he wants to go after the taivas of his heart. Hine B'chol Makom She'oskim B'Torah Tegale Charpaso. In any place that they are involved in Torah, his disgrace will be revealed. That's like the disgrace interpretation that the Radak said. Al Kain me'az haya imahim u'pirish man, because he was among them and he separated from them. Now that doesn't necessarily imply in secret, like I said. That could just be someone who like goes off the derech for a taiva reason, you know. Or let's say, for example, Rashi. Don't tell Rabbi Zimran quoting Rashi. He says, "Latava yivagesh nifrad misha nifrad me'akadosh baruch hu." That's like the Radak's first interpretation. Someone who separates from God, shelo lishmor mitzvosav, to not keep his mitzvos. Latavas libo v'yitzro hara, due to the desire of his heart and his yitzer hara, who rodef. Oh, sorry, v'yitzro hara who rodef, and he pursues his yitzer hara. V'sofo, its end, b'chol tushia yisgala bein chachamim. Among the Chachamim, his disgrace will be revealed. So that would answer the Hugh Hefner question, which is that, like, if we're talking about a person who was initially either in a state where he resisted his taiva or where he had the reputation of resisting his taiva, and then he gives into it, then it's going to be exposed that he was a victim of taiva, and then that's going to be a disgrace for him. Now I'm realizing I'm drifting from the tushia as weakness. So we can go back. Yeah.
I'm gonna tie it back in. I think if a person is like exulting in pursuing pleasure, then then like if they make clear, if it's clear that that's what their value is, then the pursuit of that isn't perceived by people as obedience, because you're just
Right.
trying to do what you want.
It's a success.
Yeah, if you're trying to do something, like if you're trying to not be a person who pursues pleasure, either actually or at least you like putting on a show of that,
Yeah.
then your pursuit of pleasure then is a weakness because you're failing to restrain yourself.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I feel like
that's like you have to, at least like apparent, like in the apparent way, is not in conflict about pursuing pleasure.
right. Certainly not in terms of his public image.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why, even according to the Radak's last interpretation, I still feel like as long as you're going with Noda la Kol, I feel like the Kol has to be a qualified Kol of like people who care about it, or you have to be in a standing where you care about not being seen as someone who like can't resist the urge for taiva. Like you have to qualify this somehow, you know.
Well, is it possible that, I mean, I don't
Well,
know.
but before you say what you're saying, did I miss your point, or is that like,
No,
is that what you're saying? Okay, yeah.
Is it, I mean, I'm not totally sure, but is it possible that, like, even the Hugh Hefner guy, like, everyone kind of sees him as, like, oh, like, he has to have these taivas to, like...
Right, that would be the other approach. You're gonna have to convince me of that,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, like,
people don't.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and again, that's, I was using that example because, again, like that's the most extreme form of taiva.
Right.
But like, you look at someone who is so here's an interesting example, okay? You look at a gourmand versus a glutton, okay? So a gourmand, I think that's the word, right? People who like are into the appetites in terms of like, eating like fine foods and stuff. That person people do look up to, but a glutton who can't control his appetite, then that's an example of this, you know? So that's an interesting case because like, conceivably they're the same thing. I mean, again, unless you're going to say that the gourmand isn't even in the category, because the very fact that he's selective in what he eats means that he is controlling his taiva, even though it's controlling it based on a value system of taiva, you know, like it's a hedonist thing. Or they say like that's like the stereotyped Epicureans and the real Epicureans, where the stereotyped Epicureans is you're just an animalistic hedonist,
Right.
But the Epicurus and his real philosophy was like this refined thing of life is all about pleasure, and like restraining yourself from the base pleasures was a virtue, and like intellectual pleasure was the greatest, you know. So like maybe that's why he's not in that category, or the gourmand, you know.
Makes sense. So we're talking about a glutton here.
I think so. So okay, this is another question here, right? Do these questionable cases force us to limit the scope of the pasuk to only places where it does apply, like the glutton or the Talmud Chacham in a social realm where people like care about this, or like is it saying a universal idea? And we just haven't found it yet. And I'd much rather it say a universal idea and that's what I didn't like about the Malbim, is like, it's just such a old men who take supplements to have vitality, or Nazirim who like separate from the nation to like, those are too specific for my taste in Mishlei.
Theoretically, like abstract a universal idea from them?
Not necessarily, and the reason why is because it's a category in. I should say it is a category in Mishlei. Since Mishlei is talking about practical decision making, there is a category in Mishlei where it talks about specific cases. And in fact, Sadigon has a code word that he says whenever Shlomo starts a pasuk with yesh, then that's definitely in this category where he's talking about a specific person in a specific scenario. Now you can extract universal principles about psychology from that, you know, and decision making, but the pasuk is talking about a specific case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas, like, I'm looking for a pasuk. I would prefer to find a pasuk that is talking about a general case and has a universal principle.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I hope you're all seeing why we didn't start our Mishlei class with this pasuk. This is an insanely complicated pasuk. You know, many moving parts here.
We've leveled up enough that we can do
Yeah. After doing 4 pesukim. Yeah. So let's just state what we have so far. Okay, what we have for sure, right? So if you are in a value system, or if you've defined your self-image in a way where resisting taiva is important to you, and you allow yourself to be overwhelmed by taiva, then there will be a negative consequence of shame from other people that you care about. I think that's the most definite thing we have.
And how are we reading the pasuk?
So the according to this interpretation, the most questionable term in the pasuk is nifrad. Right. And I still, right, the Radak didn't say that in this last one. He didn't comment on nifrad, right? Let me just think for 1 second here. I thought it was stupid. No. I thought it was a really stupid way to read it, but it was based on grammatical error. Never mind. Wait, no. Wait, maybe it's not based on a stupid thing. Can you do me a favor and look up in a Hebrew dictionary the word pered?
Pered, sure.
Yeah. This is going to be stupid, okay? But it might be like a good drush.
Like not a gesture.
I think in a Hebrew dictionary, yeah, like alkali or something.
This is also.
That's also gesture, yeah. Is there a Hebrew dictionary? I assume there's a Hebrew dictionary.
Definitely.
You know what? While you look there, I'm going to look up on the inferior dictionary on my computer. Yeah, all right. You look there. I'll still look on the inferior dictionary on my computer. You know, I have a bunch of you guys know the Green Dictionary, Zilberman?
Yeah.
Because I bought a bunch of them for my high school students, which I have sitting in my room. I should bring them to yeshiva.
Does this go by English?
Oh, maybe that's the English Hebrew one.
That's so annoying.
Yeah. Who needs that kind of dictionary, right? We're not writing poetry. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was right. Pered is a mule.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so here, ready for my stupid one?
Oh, no.
Someone who makes himself like a mule to seek taiva. And the reason why I was getting this from, he donkifies himself.
Right.
Mulelates. Reason why I was saying this is I associate it to the pasuk that Sadigon quotes in the Hakdama to Mishlei, which I believe we read yesterday in the Shiur Shel Yom. Hold on. Let me just look it up in the Shiur Shel Yom. Oh, actually, there's I saw a handout floating around somewhere.
It becomes part of the multitudes.
Shiur Shel Yom was Tehillim Lamed Beis. Yeah, it says at the end of that parak. Yeah, that's where I got it. That's where I associate it. All of Tihi, this is the same pasuk the Sadion quoted. All of Tihi Kisus Keperet Ein Havin. Don't be like a horse or a mule who doesn't understand the mesig veresen ed yo livlom, and they require a muzzle to restrain them. And Sadigon bal karovelach, to not approach you. So Sadigon said that's the fool who the only way to restrain him from pursuing his taivas is an artificial restraint. Whereas a chacham can use bina or navon, I guess, can use bina to restrain himself. Yeah, again, I think it's good drush. I don't think it's actually what it's saying, but like it's a drush that's like a mikra yosef pshuto, like right. it does apply here. Yeah, so how are we saying nifrad then?
Yeah, so I think maybe we can use this to answer our question of...
Use my mule drusha?
No.
Oh.
That would be a mule thing, but...
Yeah.
That's good.
I think we use the word nifrad to help us explain what the case is.
Okay.
I think it's that the person is separating in some way. I'm not exactly sure what to seek his desires, which means that he doesn't want to be doing it in a revealed way.
Okay, right. So he's like
he's trying to have some sort of so this is something that he isn't comfortable with at least in a public setting.
Right.
They're saying that it will become revealed that he.
Yeah. So that's I think that is the vibe that the art scroll and the altar were picking up on. Oh, actually not the altar. Art scroll. One who removes himself to court lust, meaning in some sense he's making some sort of modification to avoid exposure in order to pursue taiva in this way. And the advantage of this is that the consequence matches the foolish decision, right? What's he trying to do? He's trying to avoid being found out, and the consequence, Mishlei mina keneged mida, consequence is he will be found out, right? The question though is now, how does that fit into, or does this fit into the Radak's last interpretation or not? Because how do you unify this idea with the being overwhelmed by his taiva? Unless you're going to say that, let me try this out here. Okay, maybe this is a complete idea. You want to try or not?
No.
Okay, that what's this guy's plan? He tries to satisfy his taiva on the side in a way that won't be spotted. Okay, but what's going to happen, like any taiva, is that it's going to increase, right? Either the taiva itself will increase, or your like, I mean, that's just a phenomenon of psychology, right? Is that you need more and more to get the same amount of pleasure. And I think the fact that he's doing it in secret is going to cause him to be careless about the manner in which he pursues it, right? Like, I mean, this is a mashal that Shlomo HaMelech uses a lot earlier in Mishlei, which I'm sure Rabbi Zimmer will talk about, of the mashal of like the youth goes to the prostitute. Is like, it's Shlomo HaMelech compares it to falling into a pit that you can't get out of. But like, you know, something about the secretive nature of it leads to a certain like all-inness, and like just, you feel like you could just be involved in it without anyone knowing about it. So a combination of those two factors, the fact that like he feels that it's secret, and by giving into it, like any taiva, is just going to increase. One of these two causes is going to lead to his exposure, eventually.
I don't know how that works, but yeah.
Yeah, well, the way it would work is, I mean, I think that's just well, okay, what I'm saying is like this. I'm saying these two factors, let me elaborate on that, is that like, take like drug addiction, right? So people who are addicted to drugs, and who are trying to keep it secret, either you can only keep a secret for so long until you're found out, right? That's like the quote attributed to Abraham Lincoln of, you can fool some people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time, right? So that's like one thing. Or what's the other way that the drug addict, so that's one way the drug addict gets caught, is like they mess up and they don't cover their tracks in a way, and they get caught, or their need becomes so much that it actually impinges on their non-drug using life. Like they end up stealing money from a family member, or they end up like going on a bender and having some sort of like actual physical consequence. Right. So the same thing is going to happen to any taiva, that like at a certain point, into any taiva that's trying to be kept secret, either the secretive, the attempted secretiveness is going to be your undoing, or the taiva itself will be your undoing.
And it's important that and you go all in because it's a secret.
I think that's going to contribute to it. Yeah.
And tushia is weakness.
Oh, so that's what I'm grappling with now here, because the way we're going, I think it makes much more sense to translate tushia as people who care about Torah and Chachma. That shot is better.
Yeah, because if you were like in a den of thieves, it wouldn't really matter. You wouldn't really have to keep your secret.
Right. And by the way, I think that this might be an example of where, when we were talking earlier in Mishlei about how he will use weird words to try to either teach multiple ideas or to convey nuances of one idea. So I think that this is clearly an example of the first way, that you see from all these approaches that there are multiple ideas you can learn from here, even though we haven't succeeded in learning them. But then it's possible that even according to this, he's using a word, tushia, that means weakness, to give the subtle message that like there's a weakness on his part. In other words, like the primary consequence is he's caught, right? And he's someone who cares about not being caught, being involved in taiva. But by using the word, he could have used many other words other than tushia, but perhaps he's using tushia to convey this idea that that's what is the shame for him. That's what the cause of shame is among this group of people, is that like he's weak, or like he's a victim of the taiva. And we said that that's not going to work for the Hugh Hefner people, but it will work for Talmidei Chachamim, who like view the conquest of taiva as like a virtue,
Right, because we're not talking about someone who like is doing something illegal and gets caught and is going to go to jail.
Right.
Not, like someone who's just
Yeah.
is doing a bad, like something that is shameful.
Exactly, and that's why I think that when we mentioned before, like this pasuk is not talking about any physical consequences, for lack of a better term here. It's only talking about psychological consequences in the social realm, because getting caught, being involved in taiva, I mean, unless the only exception is if like your let's say like economic standing or parnassa is dependent on this. Let's say like politicians or like rabbis who get caught like being involved in sexual scandals or like molestation type stuff, then that's like, then it'll actually be your undoing, and then it's more than just shame.
Well, also in the Torah system, like under Shlomo Melech's rule, like it would actually be illegal to do that.
Right. You mean against the actual like law of the country? Yeah, right. And it is interesting. Speaking of Shlomo Melech, I mean, we know he wasn't doing this for when he married all of his wives. He wasn't doing it out of taiva. That seems like that he was doing it for political reasons. But like it is like called. Sorry, people do call it taivas nashim. Like that, they phrase his hate like that. So like in a way, I mean, he wasn't trying to do it secretively. But in other words, the reason I bring that example is because it's possible that like depending on what the nature of the person is and the hate and how they're caught and who catches them, then the shame could still come down to a shame of like you're a taiva maniac, Like let's say like an example of this is like David Melech with Avishag Shunamis was very careful to like, so he didn't sleep with her, right? And he also took precautions. I forgot what it says in the pasuk that indicates that, but he took precautions to not give off any appearances that he was sleeping with her. Like, I think she came in secret or something like that, But you can imagine if like that got out, that like, the story is David Melech, and towards the end of his life was cold and nothing would warm him. So he had a young virgin woman sleep with him to warm his flesh. That's how I think it says in the Tanakh. But like but it says he didn't like lie with her, But like, that looks really bad, So if he were found out, it could still be framed as like the cherpa of being yavakish taiva,
Yeah, right.
And I'm not saying that that's tied to the pshat of the pasuk. I'm just saying like the pasuk is putting the emphasis on that's the cherpa, that's the disgrace. Is you're found out as one who's yavakish taiva, and I'm just saying that even in minor cases of this, where you're not actually like separating to be involved in real taiva, this is still a consequence that could land on you,
I'll also say about the Jews, the word Toshia.
Yeah.
Is that it's not just that it is a weakness, it's that I think also by concealing it, he's causing other people to look at it as a weakness.
Right. The fact that he has to do it in private. Yeah.
Yeah. And let's say you have a Hugh Hefner and the person who is living the exact same lifestyle but in secret.
Yeah.
Then if people find out, then like the way people will think about him doing that is as a weakness, but without like even like realizing that they're not like that's the thing about like Hugh Hefner. It's like totally like they feel totally different. I also don't know anything about that.
Yeah, I mean that is an interesting point, that there is a certain in this framework, not in Torah framework, but in this framework, there's a certain advantage of owning your taivas, of like the open. I mean, according to this pasuk, in this pasuk, someone who's openly living a taiva-centered life will not be subject to this consequence. Right. And again, that's not to say that that's good, and in fact, in many ways, it's worse if you're openly doing it. But this consequence you'd escape from. This is specifically like the hypocritical type of person who is like trying to portray himself as someone who's not involved in the type of lifestyle, and he has to separate himself to do it. And yeah, the fact that he separates himself shows like a certain weakness. Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of like Eliyahu, like don't jump from branch to branch, like when they're like either you serve Baal.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And the funny thing about that is like from the framework of perfection, the person who's concealing the taiva is better off, right? In terms of like developmentally, like the fact that he's controlling himself and restraining it is better. But from a social being found out perspective, it's bad. And from a value system perfection quality is bad. Like that's like Rabbi Che gave a shiur on that once with Eliyahu, is like, you know, you're never going to find an NCSY advisor who goes to kids who are like partially religious and says, look, man, choose it. Either go off the derech or go on the derech, you know, because developmentally, then, you know, at least those people are on their way to serving Hashem. But what Eliyahu was pointing out is, don't think that you actually have a real, like metaphysically, you're in contradiction. Mm-hmm. You know, you cannot be Hashem echad ein od milvado and Baal as a god, you know? So similarly here, I would say that the person who's involved in taiva on the side and trying to conceal it, developmentally is on a better path than the person who's openly living a taiva lifestyle. But metaphysically, he's in contradiction, because either this is good or this is bad, you know? And like, that's also where you have all the chazals about how kol ha'over avera b'seser roy lo shelo nivra. If you do an avera in secret, it's better that you were never born, right? Because you're denying God's hashgacha, or you're denying God's knowledge, you know? So metaphysically, that's a bad state to be in. But in terms of developmentally, in terms of like what's going to be on a better path in terms of like getting you to do tshuva or like progressing, then the secret taiva is better than the non-secret taiva, which is why Chazal give the advice. I mean, this is the controversial advice that not everyone takes literally, but if a person sees that the yitar is going to overcome them and they can't control it, what should they do? They should dress in black and go to another city and do everything their heart desires and not be machal shem shamayim. You know, so it's machlokas whether that is intended as literal advice or not. Like Rashi says, by going through this process, it'll stop him from doing the chait. But then I believe it's Rabbeinu Hananel, I think it's Rabbeinu Hananel, I mean, and others who say that that like, if you can't control yourself, you can't control yourself, but you can at least take measures to not be machal shem shamayim, you know? So like, you know, and that person is this exact case, right? That's like someone who sees that they can't control their taiva, but they're at least doing it in a way where it's not going to cause a chilul Hashem by being known to people. Right. Yeah. All right, that was quite a ride here, right? Quite a journey. So let's just summarize it and summarize what we have. So what we're saying is the subject of the pasuk is, maybe we can get this clear, but in an expanded sense, the subject of the pasuk is a person who is addicted to taiva and hopes to conceal it because of the social ramifications. We try to get that clear, right? Someone who wants to be viewed as a porish, despite the fact that they are a mevakish taiva. So what's going to happen is b'chol tushia yiskala, which we're saying is b'chol anshe tushia yiskala. He will be exposed among other chachamim and or people of Torah, people of chachma. Why? Because the giving into taiva increases the need for more and more in order to be able to sustain the pleasure. And the fact that he's doing it in secret makes him think that he can get away with it. And the fact that he's doing it in secret repeatedly, just by nature, will tend to make him looser in terms of his attempts to cover up his tracks. So through one of those avenues, he will be found out, either because the strength of the taiva will make him pursue it in a way that makes him found out, or he'll get lazy and sloppy, or just just by chance it'll come out. And when it does, then he'll experience this shame of being shunned by that social group of chachamim or Torah people that like whose opinion he cares about. Yeah.
I thought we were reading tushia as weakness, not.
So I'm switching now. I'm saying that I think it actually is a better reading in the pasuk when you say that he'll be exposed among all tushia people. And then I'm saying that the nuance is he'll be exposed as a weakling. You know, but I think the plain shot is like which one did the Radak say? Bein kol hachachamim tegale charpaso.
Yeah, and by like Torah people, we mean like those are the primary examples of people who care about or like the order and restraint.
Yeah, right. Right.
About, but it doesn't have to be. It's not necessarily. Not like limited scope like Torah people.
It's not limited to them, but I just don't think it's likely that other people will look down on it. I guess it depends on how. See, I think when it comes to non-Torah people, let me say it again. Torah people will disgrace him, will view him disgracefully, no matter what taiva it is. society will only view it as disgraceful depending on how the society regards that particular taiva, right? So let's say, for example, you know, in American society, I think, you know, they would not view it this way if it was like romantic love, but they would view it this way if it was like some sort of frowned upon sexual practice. Or they would not view it this way if it was like someone was addicted to popularity, to celebrity status. Like, fine, so they're trying to get celebrity status, but they would view it this way if it was like some sort of corruption, like political corruption. That, you know, so like it's totally based on the particular.
Yeah. So it would be anyone who, I'd say, maintains a sense of like law and order insofar as this type of his person.
Right. Yeah. So if you wanted to try to say that this is the Raw Boggs law and order thing, then that would work. Yeah. But I think you still have to say.
If people.
Yeah. Ante tushia. Yeah. Right.
I'm saying, when you say Chachamim,
right.
I think that they're the catch-all of this type of thing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's saying it in an absolute sense by Chachamim, but then it could apply in other realms also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty. So we made it. We got one idea in this pasuk. Yeah. Okay, guys. So we were changing plans. I didn't announce this formally yet, but we're changing our morning shiurim to Mishlei, Monday through Thursday, instead of doing Mishlei, tefillah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then tefillah is going to be.
So I haven't decided that quite yet, but it'll be on one of the nights. Yeah.
Okay. And so the to go back to pasuk for a second.
Yeah.
So let's say like in like certain European cultures, I don't remember which offhand, but like they like look down at Americans for like having like a very like indulgent pursuit of like food.
Right.
So like in those cultures, if you're a glutton, then this pasuk would apply. Also.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I meant by it's going to differ in how the society views the taiva. Yeah. Alrighty.
Cool.
All right. See you guys. Thanks for joining.
Is your most recent